Welcome to Chicago, the city of wacky politics, deep dish pizza, and as of the moment, the best team in professional football. You need look no further than the shores of Lake Michigan to find a bunch as tough as any gang Al Capone ever assembled. In this city of broad shoulders, there are also large football players whose talent and size are roughly equivalent. From the tiniest place kicker right up to the behemoths like defensive tackle William Perry, the NFL's biggest player, the unbeaten Bears are heavy with talent. The key to their great start has been the feisty leadership of quarterback Jim McMahon, whose shining example of toughness and poise has helped all the pieces fall into place on offense. McMahon ranks second in conference passing and has added a new dimension to the total package for Bears coach Mike Ditka. But Mike knows that today's foe, Bud Grant and the Minnesota Vikings, could be troublesome. In 1984, the Vikings were doormats. But after last week's thrilling 11th-hour victory over San Diego, Minnesota's 4-3 and still very much in the hunt for a playoff berth. From Soldier Field in Chicago, it's an NFC Central battle between football's elite and an up-and-coming contender. It's the Chicago Bears and Minnesota Vikings on the NFL Game of the Week. For the last decade or so, this has been the Bears offense. Walter Payton left, Walter Payton right, Walter Payton day and night. But now Chicago can throw the ball with the best. And in their first series, Jim McMahon hooked up twice with tight end Emery Moorhead, number 87, to move Chicago quickly into Viking territory. Then, before all the fans were settled comfortably in their seats, McMahon threw a touchdown toss to number 85, Dennis McKinnon. And in the blink of an eye, the Bears were on the board. The pass was not picture perfect by any means, but that's typical of the way McMahon gets things done. This 33-yard scoring strike was McMahon's 11th of the year, and Jim, hardly the pretty boy prototype pro quarterback, is more interested in results, not artistry. With the McKinnon score, Chicago grabbed a 7-0 lead with barely 3 minutes gone in the game. But if you think those numbers are impressive, try toting up the vital statistics of Chicago's number 1 draft choice, William the Refrigerator Perry. The roster lists the rookie defensive tackle at 6'2" and 308 pounds. Most feel those numbers do not do him justice. The man who some doubted could play in this league has now become a Windy City folk hero. Besides scoring on short yardage touchdowns, Perry is also a fierce-looking sight as a pass rusher, too. After the Refrigerator put quarterback Tommy Kramer on ice, the Vikings were forced to punt, but then very nearly got the ball back on a Chicago miscue. Viking rookie Chris Dolman, number 56, was dismayed to learn the fumble occurred after the play was ruled dead. So with new life, the Bears return to an old favorite, McMahon to Moorhead over the middle. Then it was time for Payton to chip away at the Minnesota defense. And with slashing little runs, Payton single-handedly moved the Bears into scoring position. This time, however, the Vikings held when it counted, so Chicago settled for a Kevin Butler field goal. Using virtually the same repertoire that had earned them victories in their 7 previous games, the Bears ended the first period ahead 10-0 and seemed in no danger of giving up that lead. When the Bears kicked off after their field goal, they were about to enter the only period of the game when they got a bit careless. First, they allowed number 88, Buster Rhymes, to return the kick for 40 yards. Tommy Kramer then found some open spaces in the Bears zone for a couple of pass completions. This one to Darren Nelson, number 20. But the biggest Bear mistake came on a 3rd and 20 when a pass interference play gave Minnesota life. The culprit was safety Sean Gale, number 23. Inside the 5, it wasn't too tough for the Vikings to pick up their first score with Nelson burrowing in from the 1. The Vikings had now trimmed the Bear lead to 3 as the second period got underway. And Chicago came out on their next drive intent on getting that score back. McMahon called the pass as often as the run and got mixed results with his selections. Number 26, Matt Suhey, notched some respectable gains, but the Bears' deep passing seemed to be knocked off stride, just missing on 2 occasions. The officials ruled this play incomplete when wide receiver Willie Gault failed to hang on. And then a McMahon to McKinnon hookup just barely missed the mark. With the offense struggling, it was extremely important to the Bears that their defense keep the pressure on Minnesota. But the Vikings seemed intent on wiping out Chicago's 3-point lead, thanks to a circus catch from wide receiver Leo Lewis, number 87. But after yielding on Leo's leap, the Chicago defense was quite miserly for the rest of the half, shutting the Vikings down with a flurry of none too delicate gang tackles. As halftime approached, the Bears appeared to get a break when safety Dave Duerson, number 22, intercepted Kramer at midfield. But when the Bears attempted to move with Payton carrying the ball, they ended up with little to show for their efforts. Minnesota's defense was proving it could be just as tough as Chicago's by stuffing Payton. And when McMahon tried to go long, number 37, cornerback Willie Teal, made him regret that decision. Teal literally stole the ball out of the grasp of the Bears' Ken Marjoram to end the Chicago threat. But with a minute to play before the half, the hosts got one last crack at the end zone. And this time, the Viking defense was not nearly as successful. After Payton soared for a dozen, McMahon fired 4 completions, 2 to Matt Suhey, as the Bears beat both the clock and Minnesota's pass coverage. With 5 seconds remaining, Kevin Butler hit his second field goal of the game, and Chicago led by 6 as the half ended. In the first 30 minutes, the Vikings had stayed right with their Central Division rivals, and still had reasonable hopes of pulling off an upset. In the second half, however, all such aspirations would vanish abruptly. No team in 1985 has gone into the alley with the Chicago Bears and come out with a victory. The Bears fight you, claw you, mangle you, and then they finesse you to death. They can kill you softly, or they can destroy you swiftly and suddenly. To start the second half, they attack with their voracious defense, anchored in the middle by the refrigerator William Perry, a man big enough to consume the entire Viking offense. After the refrigerator chilled Minnesota's running game, the Bears' defense turned up the heat another notch and produced the game's biggest defensive play. Linebacker Otis Wilson, number 55, rumbled into the end zone with the interception, and dramatically the Bears had increased their lead to 20-7. A contest that had been hard-fought and tightly played in the first half had quickly exploded in Chicago's favor, thanks to the most dominating defense in the NFL. A second look at the touchdown reveals that left defensive end Richard Dent, number 95, hit Kramer's arm just as he released the ball. And then Wilson alertly picked off the floating pass. The result was a Bears score and a commanding 13-point advantage early in the third quarter. And it's very tough to have to play catch-up in the second half against the Bears defense. Bud Grant's easy outward manner was being put to the test at Soldier Field. Grant had coached the Vikings to a very surprising 4-3 record through 7 weeks, but now he was matched against the best in the NFL. The Bears had been dominant in each of their previous 7 victories, and they were a relaxed, confident team, sure of their abilities, and very much aware that their opponents were not particularly looking forward to playing against them. As the third quarter progressed with that 20-7 lead, Chicago turned to its consummate All-Pro, the NFL's all-time leading rusher, number 34, Walter Payton. Throughout the second half, Payton twisted, powered, and fought his way through the Viking defense. He would end the day with 118 yards, his third consecutive game of 100 or more yards rushing. The difference in the Bears' offense this season is the play of a healthy Jim McMahon. Number 9 has rapidly become one of the league's best and most versatile quarterbacks, and he, more than anyone, has made Chicago the highest-scoring team in the NFL. Early in the fourth quarter, McMahon's passing produced a Bears touchdown. Following a sideline strike to his tight end, McMahon teamed with, you guessed it, Walter Payton, on a beautifully executed screen pass that allowed Walter to prance freely into the end zone. With 9 minutes left in the final period, the Bears now led 27-7. They were in total control of the game, due largely to the play of their defense and the offensive work of McMahon and Payton. McMahon's second touchdown pass of the day was a crisp piece of offensive execution, and it was only fitting that the receiver was the remarkable Payton. Now in his 11th year, number 34 is having perhaps his finest all-around season, rushing for his highest average per carry since 1977, and catching more passes than he ever has before. It's no wonder that the Bears, through the season's first 7 weeks, have played the most consistently dominating football in the NFL. The Vikings did have a few positive moments of their own in the second half, but they were not enough to change the course or the outcome of the game. Even when Minnesota did complete passes against the Bears' aggressive defense, the Viking receivers paid for it, taking powerful hits that left them wondering if it was all worth it. The only scoring Minnesota could muster in the final 30 minutes was a safety, and that came in the fourth quarter after McMahon had been replaced by backup Steve Fuller. This was a day for the best team in the NFL to make a statement. The Bears had it all working against Minnesota. On offense, McMahon and Payton. And on defense, as usual, there were many heroes, but perhaps none as important as linebacker Otis Wilson, number 55. Wilson led a charge that produced 4 sacks and 4 interceptions. When starting quarterback Tommy Kramer had had enough punishment for one day, he was replaced by Wade Wilson, who could not escape a similar fate. A sack by Mike Hartenstein and 2 interceptions in the final 7 minutes, one by linebacker Wilber Marshall and the other by cornerback Ken Taylor, number 31, simply drove home the point the Bears' defense has been making all season long. It's very difficult to move the ball against them, and virtually impossible to do it if you're trying to come from behind. This was typical Bears football. Not much about this rather routine performance was fancy or flashy, but everything about it was solid, consistent, and ultimately powerful. And the Bears are by no means a 1 or 2 man team. They can beat you in many different ways. And against Minnesota, even the reserves got a chance to strut their stuff. Players like wide receiver James Maness, number 81. The Bears are beginning to reach the level of play that all teams striving for the championship hope to attain. That feeling of confidence that says we are going to win, not let's play hard and hope we win. Head coach Mike Ditka has harnessed the talents of his many outstanding individuals, as well as his own abilities, and he has molded a team that is both fiery in competitive spirit and precise and controlled in its execution. The 1985 Bears stand as a monument to the qualities of hard work and perseverance that Ditka himself mastered as a player with Chicago in the early 60s. When the Bears last won an NFL title in 1963, Ditka was the tight end. As Chicago looks for its first championship in 22 years, the Bears of today can well learn from the past of their head coach. The 1985 Bears are 8-0, the only undefeated team in the NFL. It is their best start since 1943. The final from Chicago, the Bears 27, the Vikings 9.